Welcome to your Unit 3 video teaching, where I'm going to walk you through ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome. I do, as you listen and pay attention to this, Rome is going to be done with a separate video. Egypt and Greece will be through me and the slides. I want you to think about which, I know this is a little silly, which one of these three you'd want to go back in time and visit if you had to choose, and then which ones, based on what you hear and what you see, that you would maybe want a vacation or take a trip to today if you were given the money and the means to do so. Both of your graded assignments kind of go off of those questions almost exactly. So it's something to keep in mind as you learn and hear, so then you're more ready for your assignments after the lesson is complete. We're going to start on the far left with Egypt. And when you start with Egypt, you have to talk about the Nile River, which of course you can see on the bottom right if you are going to choose that for your little vacation assignment. It's still around. Egypt is still a country in North Africa. It's important to remember that, yes, the ancient Egypt empire is no longer in existence, but Egypt, the Egyptian people, the Nile River, still present in our lives today. But as you can see on the map on the bottom left, Egypt is surrounded by desert. And in a lot of ways, for its earliest years of development, that was really, really important because it kept out outside invasion. And then the immense Nile River allowed Egypt to develop. The Nile River was really its foundation for growth and life, creating civilization, having government, having social hierarchies, having people in occupations from the seven traits of civilization. And in the earliest years of history and humans developing empires and nations, rivers were critical. Whether it's the land between the rivers in Mesopotamia, Indus River in India, Yellow River in China, Nile River in Egypt here, those were often a must for the earliest civilizations to grow and develop. And the Nile River is that for Egypt. Now, I got ahead of myself there. Egypt is known for its social hierarchy, and it all starts with the pharaoh up at the top. He's like their emperor, their ruler, but they also saw him as a religious figure. So, in some ways, the pharaoh was even more powerful and influential than kings and emperors maybe you've heard of in past lessons and you'll hear in future lessons. And then, of course, beyond that or below it, you would have had high priests and priestesses and government officials, a little lower, merchants, scribes, and artists, peasant farmers there at the bottom as the bulk of civilization. And honestly, probably beyond and below farmers would be slaves. So again, Egypt's hitting that a social class thing that often defines and helps us study and look back at ancient civilizations. Carrying on with Egypt, when I think of their culture, I often associate religion and its importance to ancient Egypt. I often tie those in with each other. Egypt is what we call polytheistic, and polytheism is just a fancy way of saying they believed in several gods and goddesses. And it all starts with Amun Ra or Amun Re, who they believed was linked to their pharaoh. So that's that religious connection, and Amun Ra was the sun god or the king of all gods. But they had several more. They had like a king of the Nile, the king of the afterlife, god of war, things like that. And it was ingrained into their culture. It was really important for their afterlife beliefs. If you've ever heard of like Egyptian mummies and stuff, a lot of that was done to get their pharaohs ready for the afterlife. So religion was really, really critical to Egyptian culture, and that's some connection also to the pyramids that people love to visit even today. Historians, by the way, split up the story of ancient Egypt into chunks. Just like a student K through 12, you think elementary school, middle school, and then high school. That's kind of what historians have done with ancient Egypt. Before the discovery of their language, their written language, hieroglyphics with the Rosetta Stone, historians really didn't know much about ancient Egypt. And this is one way when you're beginning to learn about it, if you want to explore more. They split up the story of the ancient Egypt empire into three different chunks of time. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, even beyond 712 BCE, the Egyptian people and the Egyptian culture didn't cease to exist from the planet, but the story of ancient Egypt kind of fizzled out by that time. So that's Egypt in a very, very quick nutshell. And then from now, or from that, we're going to jump into ancient Greece, which was a very, very powerful cultural empire that existed from about 1200 to 323 BCE. And the beginnings of it are forming around the Aegean Sea about 4,000 years ago. So that's going to be, I'm recording this in 2024, about 2,000 years ago, getting back down to the year zero plus 2,000 more years. And at its peak, Greece is going to expand to locations like Spain, that far west, and as far east as places like India. Greece, by the way, I always think of it as having a lot of achievements and things that lasted well beyond 323 BCE, and many of their ideas and concepts for how they formed their civilization still exist in our world today. For example, they had over 1,500 territories or little city states that all had their own government. So just like Indianapolis has a mayor today, Kentucky has governors, and we have states and cities that kind of are in charge. They have like their own court systems and own police systems. Greece kind of did that as well under the banner of all being Greek. And then some city states actually began to practice things like democracy. Um, Athens started giving their people a voice in government. And no, it wasn't like it is today, but a lot of historians point to Athens being a very early beginning for the stuff we have today, like elections and being able to write your congressman or congresswoman. And Athens started to shift away a little bit from the idea of kings or emperors being in charge of absolutely everything. Greece also could hold their own in military conflict. The Greco Persian Wars, which were about 21 years from 500 to 479 BC, are when Greek city states, particularly Athens and Sparta, came together and held their own against the mighty Persian military. And yes, this is partially what contributes to Sparta. I've ever heard of schools like maybe Michigan State that are nicknamed the Spartans. They're known for being legendary military warriors, being very tough. They would often start training young boys as young as 5, 6 years old to be vicious military soldiers, extremely brave. And there's legendary stories of Spartan military tactics in ancient Greece history. By the way, Greece, extremely beautiful. I've always wanted to visit it. These are pictures that are taken more recently. Of course, you got the 300 poster over there as well of historic landmarks that you can go and visit and see in Greece, like even right now. I'll do this all at once. Excuse me. There are a lot of, I mentioned this earlier, achievements that Greece provided to the world that I would say still exist in many ways right now. Whether it's the athletic competition, the Olympics, we're getting ready as I'm recording this for Olympics here in a couple months in Paris. Legendary poems and works of literature that are still read today by historians and English professors. The Iliad and the Odyssey are two of the most famous written works of all time with legendary Greek stories. Their unique architecture at places like the Parthenon, their mythology, their gods. Like I used to love stories about Zeus and Hercules as a kid. Some of their very real philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid the groundwork for like academics and logic and education and science today. And then, of course, Greece also had some of the biggest names and figures in world history, like a Homer, Achilles, Alexander the Great conquering, creating one of the biggest empires in world history. King Leonidas of Sparta, who was depicted in that movie 300. I guess what I'm getting at is Greek culture uh, is still very present in our lives, in architecture, in our stories, in our athletic competitions, even if the ancient Greek Empire and the old powers of Athens and Sparta have kind of become a thing of the past. Greek culture still very much around today. Now, for the story of Rome, one of the most famous ancient civilizations of all time, you are actually going to watch a video. This is linked inside of Unit 3. It's called Ancient Rome 101. So instead of slides with me, like I did for Greece and Egypt, you will watch that before you head into your graded assignment. So please make sure you watch that. It's about 4 or 5 minutes. It's really, really well done, and it will walk you through the ins and outs of ancient Rome. But speaking of your graded work, I do want to talk about that for Unit 3 so you know what's up with that. You have an exit ticket. I would, after that Rome video, do it right away because it's really, really simple. It'll take you 90 seconds to do. It's going to ask you if you had to go back in time, what civilization you'd want to visit. And then graded assignment number 2, planification. I think you will enjoy doing. It's very lighthearted. It's relaxed. It's a little different than what a lot of history assignments usually are. And I actually made an additional video that's inside the Unit 3 with video instructions. If you're confused by the Google document in any way, shape, or form, go watch that so then you know what you're doing with the planification assignment. And like I've said before, get those done before you move into anything with Unit or Module 4, and stay on top of your grades. You can use this video, of course. You can use the Rome video and get those done and knocked out, and then start moving into the second half of your semester 1 work. So whatever time of day it is, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and email me, of course, if you have any questions.